People call it goodness. Society praises it as virtue. But the uncomfortable truth is this: niceness is not kindness. It is compliance disguised as morality. Niceness is not rooted in strength. It is rooted in fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, fear of rejection. And because it is fear-based, it is one of the easiest psychological traits to exploit. From childhood, niceness is trained as survival. Be polite, be agreeable, don't cause trouble, don't upset people, smile even when you're uncomfortable. Over time, this conditioning creates a silent belief system. If I am pleasant enough, I will be safe. But the social world does not reward safety the way people think it does. It tests it, and niceness fails those tests repeatedly. True kindness comes from self-command. It is chosen, not reflexive. It says, I can say no, but I choose fairness. Niceness says, I don't want friction. One is an expression of strength. The other is an avoidance of discomfort. That difference is not philosophical. It is behavioral, and humans are wired to detect it instantly. Society rewards niceness early because it creates order. Nice children are easier to manage. Nice students don't challenge authority. Nice employees don't question decisions. Nice friends don't rock the boat. But what maintains order early becomes a liability later. Because the same traits that make someone pleasant also make them predictable. And predictability is leverage. Most nice people don't realize this, but their behavior communicates far more than their words ever could. Hesitation before disagreement, over-explaining simple decisions, apologizing for boundaries, nervous laughter when tension appears. These are not signs of kindness. They are signs of emotional accessibility. They signal to others, you can influence me, you can pressure me, you can move me. This is why manipulators identify nice people almost immediately. Not because manipulators are geniuses, but because nice people broadcast their vulnerability unconsciously. Manipulation does not begin with cruelty. It begins with testing. A small request, a subtle guilt trip, a mild urgency, a harmless seeming favor. When the nice person complies without resistance, the manipulator learns something important. There is no cost to pushing further. Niceness trains people how to treat you. Every time you override your discomfort to preserve harmony, you teach others that your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you explain yourself emotionally, you place others in the role of judge. Every time you absorb disrespect silently, you normalize it. Not because others are evil, but because human behavior follows reinforcement. Here is the harsh reality most people avoid. Niceness collapses authority. Not because kindness is weak, but because compliance erodes self-command. Authority is not about volume or aggression. It is about stability. People instinctively defer to those who do not bend under emotional pressure. When someone senses that you will abandon your position to be liked, they subconsciously downgrade your status. This is not malice. It is hierarchy logic. Nice people are often shocked when they are disrespected. They think, but I've been good. I've been fair. I've been patient. What they don't realize is that respect is not earned through accommodation. It is earned through containment, through knowing where you end and others begin, through the ability to disappoint without collapsing. Niceness is often fear pretending to be morality, fear of being disliked, fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing alone. Many nice people believe they are choosing goodness, but unconsciously they are choosing emotional safety. And safety is not respected in competitive social environments. It is targeted. This does not mean becoming cruel, cold, or hostile. Strength-based kindness still exists, but it is selective. It has limits. It does not rush to soothe discomfort. It does not apologize for boundaries. It does not explain itself emotionally. Strong people can be warm without being accessible, calm without being passive, kind without being compliant. Nice people cannot, because niceness is not a conscious choice. It is a reflex, and reflexes are easy to exploit. This is the moment of identity activation, the shift from approval-seeking to self-respect, from emotional availability to emotional sovereignty, from needing to be seen as good to being grounded in who you are, regardless of reaction. When niceness ends, manipulation loses its entry point, and something subtle but irreversible happens. People stop assuming they can move you. That is the law most people never learn. Niceness signals emotional accessibility, and accessibility invites control. Before we go deeper into why niceness collapses authority, tap like and hit subscribe, because what comes next exposes the difference between kindness and self-command, and compliance disguised as virtue. Also, niceness is not just a behavior, it is a psychological strategy, one formed early, reinforced often, and rarely questioned. And until it is questioned, it remains one of the most reliable access points for manipulation. To understand why nice people are so easily controlled, you have to look beneath the behavior and into the emotional drivers that keep it running. At the core of niceness is not generosity. It is conflict avoidance. Nice people do not fear disrespect as much as they fear tension. Disrespect feels abstract. Conflict feels immediate. Raised voices, disapproval, awkward silence, emotional friction. These trigger the nervous system far more intensely than slow, subtle boundary erosion. So the nice person learns to trade long-term self-respect for short-term emotional relief. They give in, not because they agree, but because they want the discomfort to stop. This is the first vulnerability manipulators exploit. Manipulators don't need to overpower you. They only need to create emotional pressure and wait. A hint of disappointment, a subtle accusation, a look of hurt, a rushed deadline, a suggestion that you're being unfair. For someone who fears conflict, these cues feel dangerous, and the fastest way to neutralize that danger is compliance. The second driver is the need to be liked. This is not vanity, it is survival conditioning. Many nice people learned early that approval meant safety from parents, teachers, peers, or authority figures. Praise reduced punishment. Agreement prevented rejection. Over time, the brain links likability with protection. So, when approval feels threatened, the nervous system reacts as if survival is at stake. Manipulators understand this intuitively. They don't demand it. They imply. They withdraw warmth. They hint at disappointment. They frame resistance as selfishness or insensitivity. And because the nice person's self-image is tied to being good, they rush to repair the perceived rupture. They explain themselves emotionally. They give more than they intended. They tolerate behavior they would never recommend to someone else. This leads to the pattern of over-explaining, over-giving, and over-tolerating. Nice people explain because they believe misunderstanding causes conflict. They give because they believe generosity earns goodwill. They tolerate because they believe patience proves virtue. But psychologically, these behaviors do something else entirely. They signal insecurity. They communicate that your boundaries are flexible under pressure. And once that signal is received, it does not disappear. Guilt is another lever. Nice people are highly sensitive to guilt because they equate discomfort in others with personal responsibility. If someone feels bad, they assume they caused it. Manipulators weaponize this by externalizing their emotions. You made me feel I wouldn't be upset if you had. After everything I've done. These statements shift emotional ownership. The nice person absorbs the weight, even when they did nothing wrong. Politeness becomes another trap. Nice people confuse politeness with self-erasure. They stay quiet to avoid seeming rude. They soften boundaries to avoid seeming harsh. They smile through discomfort to avoid seeming difficult. But politeness without self-command is not grace. It is permission. And permission invites escalation. Underneath all of this is an unconscious contract many nice people carry, rarely spoken but deeply felt. If I'm good, I'll be safe. If I'm understanding, people won't hurt me. If I'm accommodating, I won't be rejected. If I don't push back, nothing will explode. This contract feels logical until reality breaks it, because safety does not come from compliance. It comes from clarity. Manipulators break this contract repeatedly. They take more, push further, ask again, test again. And when the nice person finally reaches a breaking point, they're confused. Why does this keep happening to me? Because niceness does not deter manipulation. It invites it. Not consciously, not maliciously, but predictably. Here is the uncomfortable truth. People who do not need to be liked are extremely hard to control, not because they are aggressive, but because they are internally stable. Approval has no leverage over them. Disapproval does not destabilize them. They can tolerate being misunderstood without rushing to correct it. They can disappoint without collapsing. That emotional independence shuts down manipulation at the root. This is where the internal shift begins. Releasing the need to be liked is not about becoming cold or hostile. It is about reclaiming emotional ownership. Other people's feelings are not your responsibility. Their disappointment is not your emergency. Their urgency is not your command. When you stop managing others' emotions, manipulators lose their most reliable handle. When the need to be liked dissolves, something fundamental changes. You stop explaining. You stop overgiving. You stop absorbing guilt that isn't yours. And without confrontation, without drama, without aggression, the dynamic shifts. Because the deepest law of manipulation is this: the need for approval is the most reliable handle for control. Remove the handle, and the grip disappears. Manipulators rarely begin with cruelty. They begin with testing. The first move is always small, because the goal is not to take everything at once. The goal is to locate what you will tolerate. A small boundary violation is a probe, a harmless seeming joke at your expense, a minor request that ignores your time, a subtle dismissal of your discomfort, a slightly disrespectful tone, disguised as being honest. None of these are random. They are diagnostic. The manipulator is asking one silent question: will this person resist, or will they accommodate? Nice people often respond with politeness instead of resistance. They laugh to keep things smooth. They smile to avoid tension. They apologize for being uncomfortable. They explain themselves to prevent misunderstanding. And every one of these reactions teaches the manipulator the same thing: pressure works here. The boundary was crossed and nothing happened. No cost, no consequence, no withdrawal of access. That is the green light. This is why apologies, explanations, and smiles encourage escalation. Not because kindness is wrong, but because kindness without enforcement becomes permission. When you apologize for being hurt, you reposition the manipulator as the victim and yourself as the one who caused the problem. When you explain your boundary emotionally, you invite debate. When you smile through disrespect, you normalize it. These behaviors reduce friction, and friction is what teaches others where the line is. Without friction, there is no line. Once the first test passes, the sequence becomes predictable. It follows a pattern that repeats across workplaces, relationships, friendships, and family dynamics. Request to guilt, to urgency, to entitlement. It starts with a request that sounds reasonable. Can you help me real quick? Can you do this for me? Can you cover this once? Nice people say yes because saying no feels harsh. They want to be seen as supportive. They fear disappointing others. They believe cooperation will earn goodwill. The manipulator watches closely, not for the answer, but for the ease of access. Then, guilt enters. After everything I've done, you're really going to say no? I thought you cared. The goal of guilt is not persuasion. It is emotional ownership. It forces the nice person to carry responsibility for the manipulator's feelings. The nice person begins to feel selfish for having boundaries. They start justifying themselves. They start negotiating internally. And once guilt is accepted, control is already happening. Then urgency appears. I need it right now. It's just this once. If you don't do it, everything falls apart. Urgency compresses time so you can't think. It forces you into reaction mode. It makes your nervous system prioritize relief over judgment. Nice people are especially vulnerable here because urgency feels like a crisis, and crisis triggers their caretaking instinct. They rush to fix the discomfort. Finally, entitlement is installed. What was once a favor becomes an expectation. What was once a request becomes demand. What was once could you becomes you should. And because the nice person complied repeatedly, entitlement feels justified to the manipulator. They do not see themselves as exploiting you. They see you as available. Availability becomes your identity. This is how niceness trains others to push further. Behavior is conditioned by outcomes. If pushing gets results, pushing increases. If guilt works once, guilt becomes routine. If urgency forces compliance, urgency becomes the default. Nice people think they are maintaining peace, but they are actually teaching others the rules of engagement. Pressure will be rewarded here. The cycle ends only when the reward ends. This is why silence and neutrality disrupt the sequence immediately. Silence removes emotional participation. Neutrality removes guilt absorption. When a manipulator pushes and you do not react, the leverage fails. When they apply guilt and you do not explain, the tactic loses traction. When they introduce urgency and you slow down, the strategy collapses. Manipulation needs you to move emotionally. It needs you to justify, reassure, soften, or rush. When none of that happens, the manipulator is forced into uncertainty, and uncertainty is the death of control. This is not about becoming rude. It is about becoming contained. Containment is the ability to feel discomfort without leaking it into compliance. It is the ability to say less and hold more. It is the ability to let someone be disappointed without treating their disappointment as an emergency. If this is shifting how you see approval, boundaries, and leverage, tap like and hit subscribe. Your support matters because it helps this message reach people who are ready to stop performing goodness and start becoming kind, but not available. And this is where identity shifts. You move from emotionally readable to strategically contained. Readable people leak guilt, fear, and urgency through their face, tone, and speed. Contained people do not. They pause. They observe. They respond only when clarity exists. They do not defend boundaries emotionally. They enforce them behaviorally. And this brings us to the law you must internalize. Boundaries are learned through resistance, not politeness. Politeness can maintain surface harmony, but it rarely teaches respect. Respect is taught through cost, through consequence, through consistent limits that do not bend under pressure. Once the cycle stops being rewarding, manipulators stop running it. And once your boundaries stop being negotiable, niceness stops being exploitable. In the next part, we'll expose why niceness collapses authority socially, why people feel entitled to nice people's time and energy, and how calm firmness reorders hierarchy instantly without becoming cruel. Niceness feels good socially, but it performs poorly structurally. Nice people are often liked, appreciated, and emotionally valued, yet quietly bypassed when it comes to authority, leadership, and respect. This is not because people are cruel. It is because the human mind separates emotional comfort from structural strength, and niceness prioritizes comfort at the expense of command. Nice people are respected emotionally, but not hierarchically. Others may enjoy their presence, praise their kindness, and even rely on them, but they rarely defer to them. Emotional respect sounds like, "They're so sweet." Structural respect sounds like, "I wouldn't cross them." One invites closeness, the other establishes a position. Niceness produces the first, while silently dissolving the second. Authority requires friction tolerance, the ability to withstand disappointment, disagreement, and disapproval without collapsing. Nice people, by definition, avoid friction. They smooth tension quickly. They resolve discomfort fast. They prioritize harmony over clarity. And while this makes interactions pleasant, it sends a deeper signal. This person will move themselves to keep things comfortable. That signal erodes perceived strength. Strength is not aggression. It is self-command. The sense that someone is anchored internally and does not rearrange themselves under pressure. Niceness interferes with that signal. When you constantly accommodate, soften, and explain, you broadcast emotional flexibility, and emotional flexibility is read as negotiability. If you bend easily, others will lean. This is why people feel entitled to nice people's time, energy, and compliance. Entitlement does not appear suddenly. It develops through repetition. Each time a nice person says yes when they want to say no, they reinforce a pattern. Access is automatic. Each time they apologize for setting a boundary, they teach others that the boundary is negotiable. Each time they tolerate disrespect to keep the peace, they normalize it. Over time, what began as kindness becomes expectation. Niceness also creates a subtle imbalance. Nice people often give more than they take. They listen more than they speak. They accommodate more than they assert. On the surface, this seems virtuous, but hierarchically, it places them lower. Humans unconsciously track exchange. When one person consistently yields, adjusts, or absorbs, the other unconsciously assumes higher rank. Not because they intend to dominate, but because the structure has already formed. This is the difference between warmth with boundaries and warmth without power. Warmth with boundaries is selective. It is offered, not leaked. It is paired with firmness, clarity, and consequence. Warmth without power is indiscriminate. It flows regardless of behavior. It continues even when disrespected. That kind of warmth feels safe, but it does not command restraint in others. People relax around it too much. They test it. They push it. They take from it. Calm firmness changes everything. Calm firmness does not raise its voice. It does not threaten. It does not over-explain. It simply does not move. When someone pushes and meets stillness instead of accommodation, hierarchy adjusts instantly. The interaction slows. The tone shifts. The other person recalibrates. Not because they were told to, but because their nervous system senses resistance. Firmness without emotion is especially powerful. Emotion invites engagement. Firmness without emotion closes the loop. It communicates, "This is not up for negotiation." Nice people often believe Firmness will make them unlikable. In reality, it makes them legible. It tells others where the line is. And once the line is clear, testing stops. This is the integration point. Replacing niceness with grounded restraint does not mean becoming cold, rude, or selfish. It means removing fear from kindness. It means being warm by choice, not by reflex. It means giving without overgiving, listening without surrendering, and helping without self-erasure. Grounded restraint is kindness with a spine. People do not respect those who sacrifice themselves endlessly. They respect those who can contain themselves. Self-command creates gravity. It signals that your time matters, your energy matters, your boundaries matter. And when those things matter to you, others adjust automatically. Here is the law that reorders everything. Respect follows self-command, not self-sacrifice. Sacrifice without choice breeds entitlement. Restraint without hostility breeds respect. When niceness ends and self-command begins, authority reappears, quietly, steadily, and without force. The final shift is not behavioral. It is identity level. This is where everything you've learned stops being something you do and becomes something you are. The transformation from nice to untouchable is not about becoming harsher, colder, or less human. It is about moving from pleasing to containing, from managing other people's emotions to commanding your own. Nice people live outwardly. Their attention is constantly scanning faces, tones, reactions. Are they okay? Did I upset them? Should I soften this? Should I explain more? Their nervous system is oriented toward external approval. Untouchable people live inward. They are anchored. They notice reactions, but they do not orbit them. They feel emotions, but they do not leak them. This is the psychological shift that ends manipulation permanently. When you stop pleasing, manipulation has nowhere to land. Pleasing is the open door. It is the silent agreement that says, "Your comfort matters more than my clarity." Once that agreement is revoked, manipulators lose their operating system. Guilt no longer hooks. Urgency no longer accelerates you. Disappointment no longer destabilizes you. And without those levers, manipulation collapses. Let's recap the mechanics that tied niceness to control. Nice people fear conflict more than disrespect, so pressure works. Nice people need to be liked, so approval becomes leverage. Nice people over-explain, so boundaries become negotiable. Nice people overgive, so entitlement forms. Nice people tolerate discomfort quietly, so escalation feels safe. None of this is because nice people are weak. It's because they are emotionally available in a world that exploits availability. When niceness ends, emotional access ends with it. And that is when the social field reorganizes. Watch what happens when niceness ends. People pause before asking more from you. People stop assuming you're available. People become clearer, shorter, more respectful in their communication. People hesitate before crossing boundaries. People stop rushing you. Manipulators respond in 3 predictable ways. Some retreat immediately. They sense resistance and look elsewhere. Some adjust their behavior, becoming more respectful and controlled. And some expose themselves, escalating, guilt-tripping harder, or becoming hostile. That exposure is not a failure. It is confirmation. The mask drops when control fails. This is how you know the shift has worked. When niceness ends, truth surfaces. Being untouchable does not mean being inaccessible. It means access is selective. You can still be kind, still warm, still generous. But your warmth no longer comes with automatic compliance. Your kindness no longer requires self-erasure. You choose when to engage, when to give, when to listen, and when to withdraw without guilt. This is kindness without access, warmth without weakness. Untouchable people are not feared because they are aggressive. They are respected because they are contained. Their presence feels stable, predictable in values, unpredictable in reaction. You cannot rush them. You cannot guilt them. You cannot emotionally corner them. And because manipulation relies on emotional movement, they become functionally immune. Notice how untouchable people move. They are unhurried. Notice how they speak. They say less, but mean more. Notice how they decide. They pause before committing. Notice how they listen, fully, without absorbing responsibility. They do not explain themselves emotionally. They do not argue to be understood. They do not perform goodness. Their morality is internal, not advertised. And this quiet self-command creates something far more powerful than likability: psychological gravity. This is where the dark psychology protocol locks in, not as a technique, but as a stance. You no longer ask, "How do I make them comfortable?" You ask, "Does this align with my standards?" You no longer rush to smooth tension. You allow tension to clarify the truth. You no longer prove you are kind. Your restraint proves it for you. This is the final law, the one that ends the cycle entirely. The hardest people to manipulate are kind, but not available. Kind, because they are grounded in values. Not available, because access must be earned. When niceness dissolves and containment takes its place, you do not become harder. You become clearer. And clarity is untouchable. If this protocol showed you why respect follows self-command, not self-sacrifice, tap like and hit subscribe. And comment this below: I am kind, but not available. Because when fear stops driving your kindness, manipulation loses access, and authority returns quietly.